It was so serious and so straight.
All right.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody.
I'm John.
And I'm Ann.
And this is John and Ann's Wrestling Podcast.
Okay.
That was
Hi,
great.
everybody.
Hi. We weren't really playing instruments.
We weren't really doing anything. We were just like sitting here.
Yeah.
With our cat.
There she is, Kathy.
Our
the
cat, Kathy, for those of you watching on YouTube, is once again sitting and sleeping behind us. So if you get to watch the YouTube version of this show, congrats, because you get to see a cat sleep the whole time.
That's right. Or maybe not. Maybe she'll wake up.
Maybe she'll wake up. Maybe she'll do something. Maybe she'll turn around.
She'll be like, you guys are nerds. You watch
usually
5 hours of wrestling.
I feel like she's gotten so used to this now, and she's like, oh, these nerds are just going to talk about wrestling for the next hour. There's no point.
Yeah, she's not even looking at us.
Yeah, she's over it. Anyway, we were out last week because I was busy.
I was free.
And so we've got a lot to catch up on.
We do. I mean, we had a lot happened. A lot has happened in the last week. AEW had their first annual, the inaugural Wrestle Dream.
Wrestle Dream.
To celebrate.
And was it a nightmare?
No. Cody Rhodes wasn't there at all. No, it was not. No, it was not a nightmare. It was a great show. Honestly, I think it was probably one of the best pay-per-views they've ever done, except for the fact that there was a sole women's match.
Yeah.
But
I did not, just so that everyone knows how woke I am and committed to my principles, I did not watch Wrestle Dream because I didn't want to pay $50 for it, and there was only one women's match.
Yeah.
I use that as the excuse to not spend the $50.
And I,
it's my right. It's my right as a woman. I still have some rights.
And I am canceled.
I still have one or two of them.
Yeah, not in AEW.
No, but
there
like
you would have
in the real world, I still have like one or two rights. One of which is I don't have to buy a wrestling show if there's no not more than one women's match. So.
Yeah, that is your right. And I mean, the one women's match they had was good. It was Chris Statlander versus Julia Hart, who's really come a long way.
I did watch clips of that, as I am a supporter of Julia Hart, and I did think that looked.
She's come a long way. Even just a few weeks ago on Collision, or a couple, when Collision first started, I remember watching a match or two of hers and being like, "Man, this is rough." Like she had a great character.
And
she's
very young.
She's very young. She's like 21.
Yeah. And she's a slight person.
She is a small, slight person. So
her main ability, her strongest suit is, flips off the top rope and stuff, like aerial stuff.
I think her moonsaults have been looking really good. They look impactful, which is good. They look like heavy and impactful, and she's been using a submission finisher, which I think is great for a smaller wrestler, especially against somebody like Chris Statlander, who's got a size and power advantage over most of her opponents.
Yeah.
And so they did a great match. Chris Statlander's been great, and she's really, especially since that Jade Cargill match, has really been hitting her stride as champion.
Yeah.
And I think I just realized we haven't seen Britt Baker in a couple weeks. She lost to Chris Statlander in a TBS title match on Collision a few weeks ago, and she hasn't been on TV since. Which
there's not a lot of opportunities to get on TV when you're a woman at AEW.
I mean, that's true, but also it's probably good for somebody like Britt Baker to be gone for a while. Similar to a John Moxley, somebody who's on a lot, it's good to cycle them out for a while.
Yeah, I agree.
Because in Britt Baker's absence, then you can get a Tony Storm to be, so. But anyway, Wrestle Dream was a great show. I'm not going to get too into the weeds because we have so much to talk about. But it was Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. was great. Swerve versus Hangman Adam Page was fantastic. And then the main event was also great. A lot of matches felt different. There were probably too many matches. I felt a little bad. I didn't care that much about FTR versus Aussie Open, which is weird because I've seen that match before and it was great. And I was excited to see it, but it just felt like even the crowd felt like a little bit tired because we were ready. There was only the main event after that. Everybody was excited to see someone potentially debut, and we just kind of wanted to get there at that point. And
someone potentially debuting, eh?
That's right.
Was there a debut that we have yet to talk about on this here little podcast?
There was. It was the Rated R Superstar, or the Rated R Superstar, as Taz on commentary, Adam Copeland.
Oh, Taz. has.
Adam Copeland, formerly known as Edge in WWE for basically his entire career. I mean, he only wrestled outside of WWE for like the early 90s because he signed there in like 97 or something. It was only for a couple of years, less than 10 years for sure, that he wrestled outside of WWE. And then he signed there and he's been wrestled basically his entire career there. So it's very weird to call him anything other than Edge. I've never known him as anything other than Edge.
You better get used to it, babe. Because he's not Edge anymore.
No, he's the rated R superstar Adam Copeland. My pitch was just call him Edge, but spell it EJ.
We could call him Crease or Cliff.
Cliff is very funny because it just sounds like a guy's name that from work that you know.
Like Border. We could call him like
Verge.
Crack. We could call him Crack.
Crack would be such a...
Just trying to think of other words that are similar to... What are synonyms for Edge?
Some that I've seen were Verge, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
End.
That's funny.
End is pretty cool. There was another one. I mean, I still think EJ is kind of a fun one.
Extremity. Fringe.
I could see. Let me say these like Excalibur and see how it sounds. Extremity hitting the ring.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fringe
coming out to help Darby Allin.
Brink
hitting the combination.
These are good.
Yeah, Brink is kind of fun.
Rim is funny. Rim is a good one.
Rim, he can't lose because if Rim loses, he's got to do the job.
Oh no.
The Rim.
I feel like
job.
MJF, if you're watching this for whatever reason, you call him Rim as during one of your promos in your inevitable rivalry.
I did see someone saying that Max. This is not an original thought from me, but someone I don't remember where I saw this, but it was somebody did say that Max Caster is most likely going to do a rap about edging at some point.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Yeah. Creep is another one, like edge the verb, you know.
Yeah.
Like creep.
Oh yeah.
And advantage.
With the advantage.
Yeah.
No, but he's Adam Copeland. It's just, I know that Adam Copeland is not a bad ring name. It's just a very normal name. And it's just hard because they can't use the name that we all know. It's like if Sting had a debut with Steve Borden and they just called him Steve Borden. It's
also annoying because there, as you've pointed out, there are a number of Adams in AEW now.
Yeah, they could do a whole faction.
Like if they could have just called him Adam, I think that would be pretty cool because Adam is like the first man.
Oh, that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, so it's like
there's definitely going to be a lot of people going Adam Copeland.
Yeah,
that's going to be happening.
It's going to be me,
Hangman Adam Copeland. Oh yeah, you are already having trouble.
I'm going to be like Adam Pageman.
Well, this Adam's older than the other two, so maybe he does, and he's like twice the size of at least Adam Cole.
Copeland is, and also I remember it because Copeland is also a composer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, which I was like, honestly, like he should have come out to a Copeland symphony.
Oh yeah, he is a big music guy. That's why he named his daughter Lyric.
Well, the song he does come out to, Metalingus, was given to him by the people who wrote it because he's friends with the band.
Yeah, and it's like just a song from their album, so it's not like a WWE produced thing. So like you can just I mean that's what happened with Ruby Soho. She one of the guys from Rancid just like let her use it.
Yeah, but that was an exciting debut. It seemed I watched it even though I didn't watch Wrestle Dream. I watched the clips.
It was like several million views on YouTube because they had the whole thing, and it was very cool. It was kind of like their Cody Rhodes moment because Cody Rhodes returned to WWE with his full like AEW entrance and look and everything, like the whole same thing, because his music also is something that I think like he commissioned, so they can use it there. And so Adam Copeland showed up with his same, he was Edge in all but name and the Rated R Superstar, which apparently they lapsed on the copyright for, so he just took it.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's cool for him to be there because he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He got me through like the mid 2000s too, when it was just like John Cena for days, and it was like Edge was one of the few guys that was like, you know, somebody I liked that was getting any sort of main event time.
And he makes Renee Paquette so happy, you
He made
guys.
everybody so on Dynamite. Dynamite was phenomenal this week. It was just like such a good episode, and it was so feel good, and everybody just felt so happy.
Yeah.
Especially whenever he showed up, like you said, Renee was
Like
so
he
happy.
shows up in a promo with Jericho and Kenny Omega, and it like Renee's face just lights up in a way that I've never seen.
I don't even see her look at John Moxley that way.
No, I was thinking that. I was like, she doesn't even light up like this when her husband shows up.
Yeah, I've only seen her look at two people that way: her daughter and Edge.
Yeah.
That's it. But it's fun. It's just like it feels good to have him around because he didn't have to be there. You know what I mean? Like I know that maybe they'll book him in a higher spot than WWE was willing to, because I do think there is some element of like under Vince McMahon, the legends were booked like that we were focused on the legends a lot, which is like a common complaint. But Triple H, I think, is using the legends like Edge like to enhance in a way that like a New Japan would, or even AEW does that a lot with like Sting and Jeff Jarrett. You know, like the older guys are not necessarily the focus. Yeah. And I don't necessarily know that Edge is there to like win world titles, but I think that Edge wanted to not just be like, hey, here's Edge in a match. You know, remember Edge? I think he wants to do something creative. I don't think he's there to be like, look, you better give me the world title.
He sounded so excited when they were doing the post scrum. The media scrum after Wrestle Dream, and he was describing filming the muscle car promo entrance before he makes his debut. They show this like muscle car driving down the street, and he was like really excitedly talking about filming that and how he was in a car in front of that car holding the cameraman out the window, and they were just filming it, and like he just was giddy talking about it.
Yeah,
and I think he just like loves the idea of being back in a less corporate. Like, not that it's not corporate, but I imagine it's a lot less. I imagine it feels a lot more like a startup, compared to like what WWE feels like. Because WWE has like this, decades of tradition and people who've been there for 20 years and they know what they do and they only do what they do. Whereas AEW is like a place where it probably feels like people are still figuring things out.
Yeah.
And so there's room to like do crazy stuff.
You can experiment and try things and like,
and just like do things yourself, and because also AEW doesn't have writers and stuff.
Yeah, it's
like
just...
WWE has a whole production team where I imagine the talent is actually probably not that involved in production.
I don't think that they are. I think you can kind of maybe pitch ideas, and you might be able to like change a script a little bit depending on who you are. Some people are probably allowed to improvise more. I'd say Cody Rhodes probably has a lot more creative freedom in what he says, but that's probably something that he negotiated.
Yeah.
But yeah, Edge, I think, Adam Copeland, I think, is very excited to be there and just do stuff. I mean, like he just even getting to interact with Christian at this point is not something he's really been able to do. They had they were both retired for a long time. And Christian is a guy that never, Edge never left.
Yeah.
Christian has never been afraid to leave WWE because he was like the first big WWE star that left WWE voluntarily and went to TNA. That was a huge deal in like the end of 2005. It was big, and then Kurt Angle did it a few months later, or like a year later or something, and it was like this huge deal. And then he came back to WWE and was like higher up the card. But Christian also didn't get Christian had a great career in WWE as a tag team wrestler and even as a singles wrestler. Had a lot of great runs, had a couple world titles, but he never had the backing and the solid main event spot that Edge did. And even Edge had to like fight with John Cena a lot, like because Edge was never the guy either, but Edge had a much better, more solidified main event spot and the company backing than Christian did. So Christian was never afraid to leave. And Christian even did that. He came back, he was in the Royal Rumble, and then he immediately went to AEW.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm excited to see Adam Copeland have this like creative freedom to try new things. And we saw that on Dynamite when he came back and he did a great promo. I don't mind him coming back and doing basically just being Edge right now.
Yeah.
Because it's familiar and it's fun and it's exciting. But I'm excited to see him evolve away from it into something else. Because Christian's also a guy that has never been afraid to, it's similar to a Chris Jericho, never been afraid to evolve his character. He hasn't been the same guy the whole time. Like in WWE, he wasn't wearing a turtleneck and talking about people's dead fathers. That's a new thing.
Yeah, I'm curious. How do you think the turtleneck is long for this world now?
Well, it cost him a fall.
Yeah.
I mean, which was great. Man, what a great match. Christian's one of the best in-ring performers I've ever seen for so many reasons. Because he is really good in the ring, and he's one of the smoothest wrestlers I've ever seen. Everything he does looks great and like basically perfect, even at like 50 years old. But he's also so good at all his character things. It's also funny when you see somebody like Adam Copeland who would talk about how it was hard for him to get to WWE, and on like, you know, they would treat guys like Edge and Christian is a little bit smaller-ish, but he is still like 6 feet tall. But you would see guys like Edge and Christian and the Hardys, and they would be like these smaller guys. They would treat them like they were these smaller, high-flying guys, and they were a little bit smaller than like The Rock, you know, and The Undertaker, and they did do high-flying moves. Then you see him against like Adam Cole and stuff, and it's like these guys are massive. Edge is huge. He's like 6'5".
Yeah.
Like he's a huge man.
Yeah. I mean, compared to Luchasaurus, they're not. But yeah.
No, but he is like the same size as Luchasaurus. So you see, like Luchasaurus is like this massive guy when he's with Jungle Boy.
He's a dinosaur.
But when you see him with Edge, it's like the same, you know. But yeah, it's very fun, and they already had the rated R era has begun, because after Edge gave a very passionate, after Adam Copeland gave a very passionate speech about he was there, he did a great job of saying. So, like, his interview thing that he would talk about is, like, his daughters told him, go to AEW and have fun with Uncle Jay.
Yeah.
Which is Christian. And so they made, like, a kayfabe version of that, where it's, like, you know, in reality, he means he's going to go there and, like, do this feud with him and, like, try stuff and have fun.
Yeah.
And do things that, like, Christian has been able to do. And then in the show, his character is like, oh, yeah, go have fun with him. I'm going to go be a tag team with him again because we haven't been able to do that. And then it organically becomes a feud, which is like
he hugged
brilliant.
He hugged him, and then Christian, while they were hugging, said, go fuck yourself.
That was great. The rated R era has begun. And I read when I was trying to do notes for this podcast, I read the AEW's official recap on their website. And they quoted it as "Go to hell." Tony, it's the rated R era.
It is the rated R era.
This isn't a movie on Comedy Central where
this is for grown-ups
subbing in, you know.
Yeah, what do they have in Half Baked for the have you ever sucked
pudding?
Feet for Coke
well,
line?
No, this have you ever sucked feet for Coke?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever sucked feet for some marijuana? I sucked feet for Coke, and then he at one point says pudding for another thing, and then but the best one I've ever seen was in The Big Lebowski. There's a part where John Goodman's character is screaming, do you see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass? And then in the Comedy Central version is, do you see what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps? I think somebody made an album out of that. I think there was a musical artist that has an album called Stranger in the Alps or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then actually Collision, I think, another example of how we're in the rated R era, because it was ass night on Collision. Let me tell you, there was the Iron Savages in one match. This one guy was like, I don't remember what the catalyst for this was, but he just did something where he motioned that he was eating ass. He just went like, blah, 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 and it's now their gimmick.
Wasn't it like when they were fighting the Acclaimed or something?
They were fighting the Acclaimed last night. Which was happening. It might have been the Acclaimed.
But I saw.
Again.
I did see that. Yeah.
Oh, you know who it might have been? It might have been they were fighting Bullet Club Gold because they are the ass boys. The Guns.
Yeah, maybe something, because I think the crowd was chanting something and he did it in response to it initially.
Yeah. And now it's basically their whole gimmick, and they just talk about eating it. Like they even that's their catchphrase now. We're gonna do something and eat that ass. And then the whole thing, because they're fighting daddy ass, and the whole thing is about eating ass. And I was like, these guys are gonna come out dressed like Rikishi next week with his like in the thong and stuff. And then later on in the night, Tony Storm and Kiera Hogan Kiera Hogan was chopping Tony Storm's ass,
Yeah.
and then at one point Tony Storm bit Kiera Hogan's ass. I'm like, this is
And not just bit it once, like
Yeah.
like it looked like
And Tony's talking about titty slaps and all this stuff, and it's just like it really is the rated R era. We're going.
Yeah, they are building their own little attitude era.
They are.
It's quite funny.
But it was a fun show. Collision. I mean, AEW really. I thought they had a great week. Collision was a great show. It felt more subdued than Wrestle Dream and Dynamite, but I think that was because they had big hot crowds, and Collision had a hot crowd, but it did seem a little bit lightly attended because I could see it. You could see it because it was dark, but also you could see it during Ricky Starks' entrance.
Yeah, they had a lot of empty seats in like the lower bowl behind the ring where you can't hide them.
Yeah. So it's rough. But Ricky Starks finally has a real belt. He was the king of the fake belts for a while because he won the FTW title, which is not an officially sanctioned belt, and he got that Owen Hart Cup ceremonial belt.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he finally has an actual belt. He's a tag team champion, Big Bill, which I think was a great choice.
Ricky, we're proud of you, bro.
Stay in AEW because actually that was something I wanted to talk about.
The pebble got bigger.
He did. He's a full-grown boulder now. Yeah. But I wanted to talk about this, and I feel like this is a good transition. There's a big... So, Jade Cargill's with WWE.
Yeah.
Adam Copeland is with AEW.
Yeah.
I've seen people going back and forth,
and
I'm hearing a lot of rumors that this is going to be this is going to happen more and more, which is fair. And I like people being able to go back and forth. I don't begrudge people going to WWE. I get that. I want everybody to go to whatever promotion fits them the best for whatever part of their career they're in. You know what I mean? Like Jade Cargill, it makes sense for her to go to WWE. It made sense for Cody Rhodes to go back to WWE. It makes sense for Adam Copeland, who wanting creative freedom, to go to AEW. You know, it makes sense for somebody from the indies a lot of times to go to AEW. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it makes sense. Go where it makes sense for you to go. Sometimes it makes sense to go to Impact or New Japan or whatever. That's what I love about having multiple promotions. But I have been seeing people being like, it seems like we don't want to fall into a thing, or AEW doesn't want to fall into a thing where the older WWE people go to AEW and the younger AEW people go to WWE, because that is what killed WCW, because they would take Hulk Hogan and he would ruin everything. And then they lost Steve Austin because he got frustrated and went to WWF.
Yeah, if you're using the older talent to like stymie your new talent.
Yeah, and I don't think AEW does that much. Like Chris Jericho mostly puts over younger people. Christian is putting over tons of younger people.
I think it's
I don't
tricky
think
because
Adam Copeland's gonna do that either.
If you look at people like Jade Cargill, I mean, it's obvious Jade left because she was going to get more opportunity in WWE, and like I think for the women, it's a bigger risk than it is for the men, maybe because there's more because they book the men more.
Yeah, and I think that was part of my point here, because I love Timeless Tony Storm. Yeah. If you haven't seen Timeless Tony Storm,
we love Timeless Tony Storm,
and the crowd loves Timeless Tony Storm.
Yes.
She's over as hell, and she was on Dynamite and Collision. And she's a great example of what you can do when you she's a great example of somebody like an Adam Copeland who can come over and like do this character that maybe she wouldn't have been able to find in WWE. I mean, I know that they had big characters, but you're not always able to like find it because they just kind of sometimes give you a character and you just do the same beat over and over again. This was allowed to evolve. So she's a great example of what we can do with the women's division. She doesn't need a belt. This happened because she lost a belt.
Yeah, I think she shouldn't have a belt. I think she should just be an agent of chaos. I do think she runs the risk long term of ending up in like the Nikki Cross like purgatory, where she's just a character that's so crazy and kind of brainless that like she gets like sidelined for a lot of things because like you can't like they don't know what to do with those types of characters, I think, a lot of the time. And I feel like with like people like Nikki Cross, you would just like slowly see less of her because it's like, well, we can kind of do things with her, but like we don't really know what to do with the Mad Woman character, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
but I do like it, and I hope it continues, and I hope they do right for it in a way that makes sense.
Me too, and I think it's a great example of what we can do with the women's roster. You know, you can have her be there and like be a character and having real feuds with people that aren't involving titles, and you can do that with everyone because they have a great women's roster. You know, I watched a little bit of ROH this week and saw Athena defend her title against legit Layla Hirsch, and they had a whole thing with her and Billy Starks, and Billy Starks was like convinced her not to like beat up Layla Hirsch more after the match, and Athena begrudgingly did it.
Oh, Billy.
And so it's like we can have these characters, and I think that is something they should really focus on.
Yeah.
Because I think you want to keep, because Toni Storm is a great example of one of these like ex WWE people that, and she is very young. I know she was in WWE, but she might as well be the same as like Ricky Starks for how young she is. I mean, she's younger than Ricky. I don't even think she's 30. And she, she has this character now. She's dialed in, she's checked in, and she's doing something fulfilling there. So you're not getting this thing where it's like maybe there are rumors like somebody like a Malachi Black or an Andrade are just kind of waiting to go back to WWE. And it's like, if you make it worthwhile for them to stay, they can stay and help build that brand. And I think you should really focus on the women's roster because, like you said, right now nobody's getting that opportunity. So it almost doesn't even make sense for a lot of people to sign with AEW if they're a woman.
Yeah,
and
you're never going to be on TV.
Because there were rumors that they're going to sign this wrestler named Mariah May, who is a British wrestler, and she was in Stardom, and they're going to bring her in. I'm like, this is great. Bring her in, push her, maybe put her with Toni Storm or something. You know what I mean? Like, make this a priority because you don't. Even if you like, I don't think this is the same as WCW. I don't think Adam Copeland coming in is going to be the same as like Hollywood Hogan. I think that Adam Copeland is there to help. I think he's there to do the things that CM Punk kept saying he was going to do. I think he will be there as like to help
help
put
guys over,
help people grow, like help give advice, all that stuff. I think that's something that he's definitely going to do. And I don't think that he's there to like, take all this spotlight from somebody else in the way that like Hulk Hogan did. But still, it is a situation where you want to make sure that Ricky Starks stays. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that, Eddie Kingston is probably going to stay, but like, you want to make sure that people that are homegrown talents stay. Even Hangman, it's good that the Elite didn't leave, but like younger people, because like you can get younger people to sign from like GCW to AEW because it's a big upgrade for them, but you got to make sure that they stay after that initial contract.
Yeah,
they just put my guy Powerhouse Hobbs in the Don Callis family, which is great.
Yeah,
feature him. Don't let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's. And also, don't put it all on Toni Storm. Don't like have Toni Storm on every single show because she's over. Use Toni Storm on one show or sometimes, and then use other people so that you have a whole roster of people that are as over as Toni Storm. You have multiple Toni Storms.
Yeah.
That was my take on it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like Toni Storm, and I think they should keep booking her.
Great. Then it's decided. Well, don't fire her.
Well, did you want to talk about Fastlane NXT?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, let's just do that real quick. So I watched Fastlane as well. And, Fastlane was a fine show. It's like hot crowd. Everything looked great. It was probably a cool show if you're in Indianapolis and it's like, oh, it's a big WWE show. The opening match and the main event were both good. The middle was fine. I mean, it was like, it just was a very... I don't know. There was nothing wrong with the show. I think they set up kind of a high standard up until SummerSlam this year. Like a lot of their pay-per-views were very good.
What John's trying to say in his John way is that Fastlane was kind of boring. And he's not going to say that. He's going to say it's fine. It did what it did, blah, 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 because... bless you, you're a little bit allergic to giving criticism. But like, unless something pisses you off.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, it was like I watched a lot of it with you. Mm-hmm. I think I watched maybe...
You watched all but the main event, I think.
Yeah, I think I went to bed before the main event because I was very tired. But it was like fine. Like I didn't see really anything on it that I was like, oh, this is amazing. Even the like Io Sky, Asuka, Charlotte Flair match was like fine.
It was like very... Like Io and Asuka had a much better, more interesting match a couple weeks ago on SmackDown.
Yeah. The only reason I was even invested in it or nervous about it at all was because they showed Jade Cargill showing up right beforehand. So I was slightly nervous they were going to take the belt off Io and give it to Charlotte so that Jade could come out and challenge and they could have like a big girl fight.
Yeah.
But like, I am happy that didn't happen. But that was the only reason I was even slightly like invested in that, because I was like, oh no, are they going to take it off Io?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it was, I mean, and they, they're great performers, all of them, but I
just, Charlotte Flair has been getting this kind of like Randy Orton disease where she just like, when she cares, she does a great job. You can tell when she's not that invested.
Yeah.
Because Randy Orton would do the same thing. He could have a killer match, but like if he didn't really care that much about what he was doing, or there wasn't much of I don't know. If he didn't give a shit, you could tell.
It also just
You
wasn't
know?
clear to me. And to be fair, I don't really watch Raw and SmackDown outside of the social media clips, but like, why were the three of them in this match?
I don't know. Charlotte's always kind of there. Like when she's
Because
around, she
I
just
know
is
that
kind of involved.
she sat and watched the Io Asuka match on SmackDown a couple weeks before, but it didn't. Like I can't figure out how narratively you get from that to the three of them in a match.
I don't know that there is a narrative reason. I mean, WWE, as much as they love to say that they tell stories, they skip most of the beats a lot of times.
Yeah.
WWE is like Bloodline, which is like, Breaking Bad levels of detail in wrestling and like story and nuance. And then there's just like, I'm trying, and then the rest of it is like not even Blues Clues. It's like less than that. Like at least Blues Clues has like a lesson and a point. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times it's just nothing. And this is, the Bailey thing that I think they're eventually going to have Bailey and EO as a thing.
Yeah, which I don't like.
Yeah,
I mean, they're always trying to split Damage Control up, and I don't like that. I want Damage Control to grow. I don't want them to shrink or divide. And then they did the other thing that I didn't like, which is they've now made Rhea like the manager of Judgment Day.
Yeah, it's very
which feels silly because she's not a Paul Heyman, she's a Roman Reigns.
They called her the leader. Which I think they think sounds like empowering, but basically what they mean is the manager. Yeah. Also, the first show where they're saying that Rhea Ripley is the leader of the group, they lost the tag team titles.
Yeah.
So what is that trying to say?
Which was also very annoying. And like, because I loved the whole the bloodline has fallen thing that she did. And I think that was the thing to chase, was just like build Judgment Day up as like the new bloodline, give them all the belts and make them these oppressive, like badass overlords that like run this place. You know, why can't we just do that? Why do we have to do this weird thing where like Rhea's talking to Paul? I mean, I liked the clip of Rhea talking to Paul Heyman and saying, "Acknowledge me."
Yeah.
But then they didn't follow through on that, like, sense of her being the Roman, you know?
Yeah.
Like, people in the comments on that clip on social media were they're going, Rhea versus Roman. Oh my God, Rhea versus Roman. Like, people were like flipping their lid because, as I believe we've even said on this podcast before, people would go nuts for Rhea Ripley versus Roman Reigns match.
Oh, of course, yes.
People would lose their absolute
Can you imagine if Becky
minds.
Lynch would like challenged the Universal Champion?
I think that'd be bigger. I think that would be a bigger WrestleMania event than almost anything else you could book.
Because it would be
unprecedented.
It would be unprecedented. It would be a huge. China was over.
Yeah.
China going against, like, when China was going for the Intercontinental title, she challenged for the world title a couple times. Like, she was over.
And I like China. And this is no shade to China, but like Rhea Ripley is like her own amazing. People are obsessed with Rhea Ripley.
Yeah,
people
I'm just saying China,
obsessed with Rhea Ripley.
China was the only woman they've ever had challenge for these titles, and she was the Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah, it's just I think it would be huge, and I think they're making a mistake by kind of sidestepping that and going, oh no, she's just like the manager of this stable of men who've lost a belt,
and she never defends her title.
Yeah,
and really doesn't wrestle as much as we would like to see her, but not in a way that's like Roman Reigns doesn't wrestle that much.
They don't know what they have sometimes, those WWE folks. They don't know what they have.
They don't. There's a lot going on, and it's just very. I like Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. I actually really like the Jey Uso story where he's like, "Screw the Bloodline. I'm going to go do my own thing on Raw." And then when he's on Raw, all these people that he helped screw over, when he was helping Roman Reigns and the Bloodline are all like, "I don't trust you." And then there's like Sami Zayn, who is his friend, is like, "I trust you, and I'm going to stand by you." And Cody Rhodes, who is forgiving and wants to give him a second chance, is right. But like Kevin Owens doesn't really trust him. Drew McIntyre doesn't trust him to the point that it's turning Drew McIntyre heel.
Here's a question: do you trust him?
Yes.
You trust
the
him?
Character of Jey Uso? I think he's.
I think he's
like in the kayfabe world. Like if I'm analyzing this, like you were to ask me, like, do you trust Jon Snow or whatever? I'd be like, yeah. I think
Okay.
his character
Oh,
is
you think he's like
genuinely.
Jon Snow, eh?
I kind of
That's
actually.
kind
He
of a
is.
lofty comparison.
He
Jon
is.
Snow is famously one of the most like morally sound characters in fiction.
Yeah.
Like the
It
good
really
guy.
highlights in Game of Thrones where most characters are not. Are not. So
Right. No, I know.
Jay. That's why the Bloodline is stupid now, is because he was the protagonist of it, and now
Mhm.
he's not in it anymore. He's doing his own story, which is fine, and his
Mhm.
story is working. The Bloodline is silly.
Yeah.
So he's very it's I don't know. I like them, and I don't mind them winning the tag team titles, but it does seem silly that it's very WWE to like start building this team up of Judgment Day, and then having them lose a bunch.
Yeah.
Also, we're talking about who are the biggest factions in WWE. We're talking about Bailey and Io Sky potentially breaking up, and it's like that's what a faction is in WWE. They're either about to break up for 7 months or they break up. That's like you always are on the verge of breaking up
Yeah.
in WWE because I don't know.
Honestly,
I understand the drama, but it's like the Bloodline was cool for a while because they were just an elite faction.
you know how they could save it? So I feel like the Judgment Day's loss at Fastlane was definitely something that narratively should hopefully instigate a fallout between Finn Balor and the rest of the crew because it's Finn's friend,
JD
that
McDonough.
guy JD McDonough,
Judgment
who
Day
keeps showing
McDonough.
up. They caused the loss because Finn took the pin and JD distracted Damien or whatever and caused him to get
He accidentally hit him with the Money in the Bank briefcase in his injured leg.
caused him to get knocked out. But I feel like if they expel Finn, which would be sad, but okay, sure, this is narrative progression here. Expel Finn, let him spiral off into a world of madness as a demon because he was rejected by his friends, and then maybe they take in Io when she's goth. When she has a fallout with Bailey. She's goth. She's got that cool entrance. She has a belt.
She's champion. Gonna unify both women's champions.
Could unify the women's champions and lead to a reign of terror. Anyway, that's my pitch for how they could salvage this. But otherwise, I'm pretty annoyed with how it's going.
This isn't the fantasy booking thing, so I mean,
yeah, okay, fine.
Jumping ahead now.
All right. Fine.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. We'll see. When WWE was like the only thing to watch, when it was like the only easily accessible wrestling, I used to get very upset about where it should go and like what I wanted to see. And now I'm just like, yeah, I mean, whatever you want to do. Yeah, I mean, I get excited for stuff, but it is kind of like, I think you told me at one point you had to like stop, like kind of stop emotionally investing in college football.
Oh,
because the University of Nebraska was so bad that you couldn't like.
I don't watch football anymore.
But then it's like once you don't care about it anymore, like once you aren't emotionally invested in it anymore, it's like kind of hard to even care about it.
Yeah.
So, but that's like what WWE is a little bit because like the main event was a very good match. It was probably one of the best last man standing matches they've ever done. Shinsuke Nakamura looked fantastic. You know, they really were like being pretty brutal with each other. It was a very good match. But even still, I just like don't. I just didn't. I think part of it is I didn't believe for even a second that Seth Rollins was going to lose. And I like Seth Rollins a lot, and I like this title reign. I think he should have like a solid title reign to help establish this title as being important. But it's also like, all right, I mean, they keep putting him against people I want to see win it more, Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura, and they give them good stories, which is good. This is all good. This is all what you want to do. But they keep. I just want to see them win it more, and he keeps beating them twice. And it's just like, all right, now who's good? They're going to challenge. Cody Rhodes can challenge him next.
Can I just say that to the point of how boring Fastlane was, I'm pretty sure you and I called the end of every single match except for the Judgment Day losing.
Yeah, that was probably.
I'm pretty sure every single match we watched, we knew exactly who was going to win.
Well, the second one was, I mean, I would have known once I saw Carlito show up. Which is welcome back,
right,
Carlito.
Because I accidentally
saw it because Peacock doesn't let you restart something.
But
you have to start live and rewind.
Like, you knew they weren't gonna have Rey Mysterio in a handicap match lose. Like that's so like not just how it works.
No, and you're also once Carlito's there, it's like, well, was he gonna come back and lose immediately?
Yeah.
So that match was weird too. It was a lot of hot tags. I think I was explaining hot tags where it's like WWE, pretty much every tag team match is the same structure, and it's a valid structure of tag team match. And it is a very logical, sort of realistic one, where it's like the babyface team, one of the guys is getting beaten down for a lot of it, and then they can't make the tag, and the crowd is like, oh, you gotta make the tag, because you're hurt.
Yeah.
And they finally do, and the other partner comes in and they're to just start beating everybody up. But it's like every WWE tag team match is like that, and there were 3 of them on this show.
Yeah.
And like the tag title match was a really good version of that, and it worked really well, and it was chaotic, and there was a lot going on. But then like the John Cena LA Knight thing was like, ostensibly that was a well-worked match. Yeah. Eventually, ostensibly that was a well-worked match, right? That was like,
yeah, but we
John
don't need to
Cena.
make excuses for these people. They should have a well-worked match. It's John Cena.
I know.
He's been doing this for 30 years.
He
can't do a well-worked match, he shouldn't even be in the room. But of course he can do a well-worked match.
Yeah, and he was like a full cartoon in this, just like the.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah,
crawling.
He's been getting more and more cartoony.
Yeah, he really
probably because he has to sell so that he doesn't have to take crazy bumps.
Yeah, that's true. And but he worked most of the match still, but it was just like,
yeah, he did wrestle a lot. I was kind of impressed at how much he wrestled.
It went on for so long because they only had 5 matches, so every match got like 15 minutes or more, which is cool. But like, I like that idea. They did that at Payback too, where it's like, I'll let matches breathe, because AEW is doing like, too many matches, which they're still good, but like sometimes it's too much. But WWE is like, some things, like last month it was Miz and LA Knight, and like that match didn't need to be 15
but
minutes
also
long.
Like, can I just quote Effie for a minute?
Sure.
Because I get Effie clips from his podcast on my TikTok a lot. And Effie pointed out that sometimes you don't, like, people chase the longer matches because they think that's like the Dave Meltzer 5-star match formula, is to have like a super long match. But like, he's like, what's the point of having a super long match if it's boring? Like, if you can do as much in 5 minutes as you can in 45 if you're working, That
correctly. Was my criticism. A lot of Triple H.
That was a summary of his quote.
It was my criticism. A lot of like later Triple H WrestleMania matches, because they'd be like, he would have a match against like Brock Lesnar and Batista, and they're like, this would be great if it was 10 to 15 minutes, but it's 27.
Yeah.
And it's like, we could cut out 10 minutes of suplexes on this and have it be. And actually, Brock Lesnar figured that out, because Brock Lesnar matches are, I mean, they've gotten a little bit boring themselves too now, because it's the same formula. But it's like, when he started doing the like 5 to 10 minute matches, and it's like, this could end at any moment.
Yeah. And I like that, honestly. Like, I think really the only time you should have a super long match is when it's a big, like the MJF matches that have been like, the hour-long Iron Man match and like stuff like that, the stuff that you're really building to, that's like a feature presentation. I think that's the stuff that should be really long. I think everything else should be between 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes
at
for
most.
15 minutes is a long match.
Yeah, 15 minutes is a very long match.
15 minutes.
Especially because like
10 to 15
for like a good like 4 minutes of that match, it's just going to be people catching their breath.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes.
15 minutes long match, you're still only getting about 10 minutes of actual wrestling.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes is like, for a mid-card match or an open, like, that's a long time, Yeah,
it's very long. It's sometimes it's not worth it.
But yeah, that is what it is. But it was fine, and Seth Rollins did a great job, and Shinsuke Nakamura looked a lot better. But I was going to talk about NXT a little bit, but I'll just say that their last show, No Mercy, was good. I mean, the first couple matches were kind of whatever. Baron Corbin doesn't really do much for me anymore. But most of the matches were good. Main events were really good. And NXT seems like it's been.
Well, sounds like
really
you just talked about
better.
NXT.
Yeah. But I want to get to
I like
the
how
show
you're like,
that you.
I was going to talk about NXT, and then you proceed to talk about NXT.
I talked about, but I could have talked about it though. Yeah, I could have talked about it.
With John, there's talking and there's talking.
There's talking. So I want to talk about your.
How was my week? Is this what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Now we get to finally hear what Anne thinks.
Me? Whoa.
If you don't want to, we can move on.
No, I'm so giddy.
Let's move on.
No. I have a thing. So my big wrestling thing this week, like I watched Collision, I watched Dynamite, I watched Fastlane with you, but my big wrestling journey adventure this week was attending a show called Chokehold. And it was Friday night. It was in Brooklyn. The show started, the doors opened at 10 p.m., which I didn't see until after I'd bought the ticket. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have made this journey.
Yeah, I'm impressed you made it.
I am too. Although me and a friend from work went and got coffee cocktails, like cocktails with
great.
coffee in them
Great.
before
Great.
the show. We were
Great
like,
idea.
let's meet up at a bar and just have a couple of these, and it'll keep us going. And it did in fact work. Like it actually, I was very awake. But I understand why people do cocaine now. Caffeinating yourself to stay awake does work. But it was drag wrestling, and the show did not start until about 11:30, which is another heroic thing I need to tell people, because again, I was awake, I was invested, I wasn't pouting and like being like, oh, I can't, when's it gonna end? I was like,
a hero's journey.
I was, because it was also a great show. All right, sorry to bury the lead. It was a fantastic show, and by that I mean it was like, even though it started late, it was absolutely almost overstimulating. I mean, it had a concept that was that we were in some kind of space dimension, and there's a giant eyeball. The 3 walls of the room had video projection on them, and they would play like promos from each of the wrestlers right before the match. So it's a very self-contained show. Like you don't have to have a lot of foreknowledge of any storylines or anything. Like they set everything up in the room, which is fantastic. If
you don't have
a
to
show like this.
Watch Monday Night Choke every week.
Yeah, no. You don't have to watch Monday Night Choke, although I would love that.
Choke down.
And the concept is that we're in outer space, some kind of alien world. There's a big eyeball that can transport people from anywhere to anywhere. And so the eyeball transports people to fight in the ring. So we'll see promos of them out in their little world, introducing themselves and like establishing a conflict. And then the eyeball will like bring them all into our ring world where we are. And then the eyeball will like create a like set around them. Like the video screens will turn into like a place, like,
yeah, it looks very cool.
Like a gym, or, you know, I can't remember what the other locations were. I just remember the gym because they made a joke about it, but that I can't say yet because I don't want to spoil who was fighting in the gym. But they had a lot of really great characters. Like Laveau Contraire was a cult leader, kind of like preacher lady who was fighting Garlic Jr., who's a pop star.
And a Dragon Ball Z character.
And a Dragon Ball Z character, apparently.
That's not a pun. That's literally what the character's name is.
And one of the things that was great about all these matches is they had these gigantic paper mache props. Like Garlic Jr. is a pop star, so she has a gigantic microphone that she pulls out from under the ring. And Laveau Contraire is a cult leader, like church Pentecostal, like evangelical lady. So she has a giant crucifix she pulls out from under the ring. And both of these props have the ability, well, any prop that someone would pull out would have the ability to be smashed into somebody and then explode into confetti.
Wow.
So it was that was very cool. My friend and I who went, we were like, I wonder what this crowd will be like, because it's not a typical wrestling show. And we looking at the crowd, we didn't see a lot of like
me.
I described it as like, you know, people who seem autism adjacent, like me. I was like, I don't know if there's like, if our like brethren are here, but it didn't matter because they were blasting music the whole time. And I mean like blasting.
That's a comedy
music.
wrestling tip. That's what comedy wrestling like XSW does during matches, so it's not like weirdly quiet. Because the crowd might not be
like the bass was thumping. It was a lot of, and they had to wait for the music to start because I think the match was probably timed to the music, because the DJ kept kind of messing up, and the MCs, there were 2 MCs who were aliens, and
Chang and Kodos.
They kept like yelling at the DJ for messing up and being like, DJ, where's our music? And they would have to vamp. But it was so funny because that's the kind of thing that you think would kill the momentum, but it didn't at all because it was so weird. And the MCs were actually really great. Like one of them was a green alien with like a big crazy nose who was like being crazy. And then I'm so bad at describing this. They're just being crazy, you know?
Yeah, it's like a crazy show. People were so crazy.
And then the other one was a lady who had a machine gun for a leg.
Oh, like in Grindhouse?
Yeah, Grindhouse, that's what it is.
Rose McGowan.
Yeah. And she did like a whole halftime lip sync performance with a dance, and we threw dollar bills for her, and she was great. But they just had a lot of charisma, a lot of energy. And then it built towards, I think the final match, I'm pretty sure, was Eric Adams versus the head of security, because Eric Adams tried to get into the wrestling show, and as the head of security showed everybody by bringing this massive clipboard, massive paper mache clipboard, and no one is on the list.
Wow.
And yeah, and
it's so exclusive. There's no list.
That's how exclusive it is. There is no list. Not even Eric Adams is on the list. And so they had a fight in the gym. The eyeball made it into a gym for them so they could fight each other. But it was a great show, and it was also only, I want to say, an hour and 15 long, because there were like
Sukeban.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 matches plus the halftime like lip sync drag performance. So they knew exactly how much of this we could take, because also it was very overstimulating because of the music and the lighting and the props, and like there's a big sword that's also a penis, and like,
yes, I saw it.
It was a lot of
that's the only way to describe it.
Very highly sexual, obviously. But it was a fantastic show. I would go again in a heartbeat. I thought it was something I was just going to have to survive because of how late it started, but I ended up thriving.
That's great. And the stage was, the ring was raised a little bit, right? It was on a stage.
Yeah, it was the same ring we've seen at the Queer Punk Outlaws shows.
Yeah.
Because the person who runs Queer Punk Outlaws was there.
And built the ring.
And had built the ring.
Yeah.
And I talked to him ahead of time. But the great thing was, because we've been to Queer Punk Outlaws show before, and the trouble we had is because we got there kind of late, we were in the back and you couldn't really see because the ring is ground level.
Yeah.
And
so we're just standing around it.
But they had the ring raised on a stage, and I was in the front row actually, and my drink was actually set on the stage, and I had to keep moving it. You'll like this. I was actually in a corner, and at first I'm like, oh wow, what great spot we got, right in the corner in the front row right here. And then the camera guy stands right in front of us.
Oh, this is great. We've had this at Collision.
Yeah, it's like
Dynamite.
Somehow I managed to pick the camera angle for every wrestling show I go to.
You just have a good eye.
I do.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and I feel bad because much apologies to that camera guy. I did accidentally bump your legs like 3 times, and I apologized every time, but I don't know if you could hear me over the music. But it was a really fantastic show. If you have the opportunity to see Choke Hole, I highly recommend it. It also was just so cool because it had like the alien concept, the built world that they had. It's very like 90s MTV. You know what I mean? Like, remember 90s MTV when they would have like those crazy cartoons and animations that were kind of like gross and weird and disturbing? That was the aesthetic of it.
Okay.
And I
love that.
It's great for a wrestling show, especially. It's fantastic. But yeah, I just loved it. What an idea for a show.
I want to go to the next one.
Yeah, you should. It felt like a once in a lifetime experience, but they do travel around. I think they're from New Orleans.
That sounds like a New Orleans type show.
They've done another show in New York before, so they,
I feel like XSW
they get around.
Should share should steal some of this video stuff. It feels like a thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really great way to have a wrestling show if you're not a company that's like on TV and can like keep people invested in long-term stories. Like, I feel like GCW is just barely big enough to do that because you can watch them on Fight, and so it's like you can keep up with it.
And a lot of people they post a lot of stuff on social media.
Yeah, and so you can keep up with like storylines in a basic kind of general way. But like, this is obviously a show where people probably aren't going to keep up with the storylines. So it was perfect. And I loved the concept of it being it was sponsored by Squelch, which is a energy drink, that these aliens are like addicted to. And they had a big can of Squelch and they were stealing it from each other. And it was great.
Yeah. I want to go to the next one. I was visiting a friend I was hanging out with a friend who was visiting from out of town.
Yeah.
Or else I would have gone to this one.
Yeah, he would have.
But I sent our field reporter in.
Sent me in the field reporter, and I had the time of my life. It was fantastic.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Did you see any big NXT superstars or WWE superstars or?
No, but apparently you showed me on Instagram that behind me up in the rafters was one of XSW's own.
Sassy Boatwright?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was
right.
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very exciting. And maybe they'll be on the show next time. Who knows?
Maybe.
What was the wrestling like? Was it like
It was like some of it actually, like I was gonna say it wasn't necessarily as huge a focus, but they did do spots, they did take bumps.
Okay, so it wasn't
like it wasn't like they were faux wrestling. Like
Yeah.
they did stuff off the top rope. I wouldn't say it was as athletic as like the most athletic
But they
wrestling
seemed like
you'll
they'd
see.
been trained. It's not like
But they
XSW
did seem like
or-
people who'd been through. Yeah, they've obviously taken some wrestling training. They knew the safe way to do like jumps and
It's
flips
not like
off the top
me.
rope. No.
Doing
Like
it.
they weren't.
No,
They
no,
weren't
not that bad.
Well, they weren't pantomiming.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. They were actually flipping off the top rope and
Yeah.
stuff. But it wasn't like a moonsault type flip. It would just be like a thing where, they would somersault forward and the other person would act like they were throwing them, so they were kind of braced against that person. But yeah, no, the wrestling was quite interesting because but the matches weren't long either. The matches I don't think were more than 10 minutes each.
No Iron Man matches.
No Iron Man matches.
See, you don't need to do 25 minutes.
You don't. Sometimes you can make a lot of a big splash with
just a big splash
in a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Well, and there was one really cool move I gotta say where one of the wrestlers and they didn't use this in a fight, I don't think. They just did it to impress people when they were coming into the ring.
To impress me.
They got up on the top rope and they jumped down into a split, like kind of doing the classic drag queen death drop. It was a wrestling version of the classic death drop that drag queens do. I don't know if you know what a death drop is. I believe Michael Hartney has done death drops on stage before at UCB. But like it's kind of where you fall back into a split so suddenly it looks like you're dead. Yeah.
Is that the thing where you like just fall back on your leg?
Yeah, one leg goes out, one leg goes back, and you're just kind of falling suddenly.
Yeah.
It was kind of a version of that, but it was off the top rope. So it was like the person like jumped off the top rope and into a death drop, and I was like, that is really cool.
Shinsuke Nakamura kind of does that too, a little bit.
Interesting. Anyway, so that was what the wrestling was like.
It's different, but it's but that's great. I want to see it. Go see Chokehold in your
Follow
city.
them on Instagram to find out when the next show is.
And now we're into shooting range. Pew 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 pew. I didn't have a lot for this week. The big thing that I saw, well, I guess there actually is kind of a one big thing. Which one do you want to talk about first here?
Oh, now no.
I want to see what, because I could go either way. One of them is short and the other one's longer, I think. Or maybe not. The one I'm thinking might be longer might be. So CM Punk maybe is going to WWE. There's rumors that CM Punk is going back to WWE. A lot of that comes from House of Wrestling, who is kind of known to be like CM Punk's personal.
And
rumor is that is like his personal, so it could be kind of bullshit.
Can I just kind of say the thing that you might not like to hear, but it's my initial reaction to this? Who cares?
I think that's why it's out there from there, because it seems like it's him putting this stuff out there.
But like my attitude towards it is like, fine, like whatever, dude. Like literally.
I mean, as somebody who was very personally invested in him before this AEW fiasco, is like, it's just, I know he just needs money at this point, but like, it's just so sad to see him have to like be this much of a hypocrite to try to go back there. It's just is like kind of heartbreaking to see somebody be like, yeah, screw that place. I was never going to get healthy by staying in the place that made me sick in the first place, is what he said. And now potentially is trying to go back there. And it's just like, man, I don't think he would be able to get away with shit there anymore, because I think that they would just be like, all right, you're fired if you start fighting people.
I think the reason he probably wants to go back there is to prove to people that he can.
Yeah.
To prove to people that they'll take him and that AEW is the problem,
Yeah, and it wasn't
That's what I think he's doing. And they can have him for all I care, like whatever, fine. Have him fight Cody and get beaten up by Brock Lesnar to within an inch of his life. Whatever. I mean, you care more about him than I do, obviously. But like, my thing is like, whatever. I've moved on. Like, part of what's been so fun about the Edge stuff, I did think this when we were watching Dynamite last week, is like part of what makes seeing Renee beam and like all these people be so happy so much fun is like I stop for a second and I think like, and nobody is even thinking about CM Punk right now. Like, we're all just having fun watching a wrestling show. The crowd isn't booing at weird shit because they're like mad about whatever. Like, we're just having fun at the wrestling show.
And I think that actually was something that I thought about while watching it. I was like, because he is sort of almost replacing CM Punk in some ways.
Definitely.
And it's just like,
and it's all
like
good vibes now.
Exactly. It just feels like the opposite vibes that you were getting when Punk was there.
Yeah.
And it's like, even when he wasn't on screen, it just felt weird. And then when he left, both times he left, when he got hurt and suspended, and then when he got fired, it was like, it was just this weird vibe, and they were trying to figure it out, and they had to do All Out the next week, and they actually knocked All Out of the park, and that was great. But it was just very a very different vibe, and it really felt like, oh, this is great, we're happy now.
Yeah. We're just moving on and living our lives. And
I mean, I do think there's fun stuff he could go and do in WWE from a totally objective, like, but it's just like, it's just sad. It just feels sad for him to go back there, because it's just like, this is not what you want. AEW was tailor made for him. And if you can, but yeah, I don't know. But he might be, I'm sure he would be better behaved in WWE, because he would probably know that he couldn't get away with shit there at this point, because he has no leverage because he has no place else to go.
I don't think he has the kind of self-control that is required to behave himself.
Maybe, but
I think if he did have that kind of forward-thinking self-control,
he wouldn't have gotten fired from AEW in the first place. Yeah, I just know that WWE is a much more corporate environment, especially now that they're like even more of a corporate entity.
And if he thinks Tony Khan is annoying, wait until you get like back with all those people who are like, have been working with Vince for 25 years and they do it one way.
Yeah, and Triple H, who personally does not like you, probably.
They make people wear like corporate attire to work every day. Yeah. Like they're freaking, it's like working at a bank that does wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Like, what a great way to describe a lot of WWE shows.
Yeah. Well, just from talking to people who've worked there too. Like you talk to people who work in that office, and it sounds like working in a bank. Like they have to wear like business attire. Like you have
to go in like a suit.
Yeah, you have to wear a suit or like skirt. I think the women have to wear like skirts to work and stuff. Like it's like pretty formal.
Yes, it's very much what you would expect from WWE. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it is kind of like a who cares situation. We'll see what even happens with that. I don't know, because there's the rumors that Survivor Series is in Chicago. But like they don't even care. It's not like they need a draw. Like it's gonna draw.
Yeah,
no matter what.
does not need him at all.
AEW is a younger company, so it helps them to have a big draw like that. With and even I think that the All Out crowd was a great example. Like All Out was such a positive environment, and that was a Chicago crowd. That was a crowd that was there. Probably most of them bought tickets to see CM Punk, and they weren't shitting on the show. They were so positive and happy throughout that whole show, and in a way that AEW really like needed them to be. Because I think they understood. It was the first time there was like maybe some ambiguity. This time it was just like, all right, there was an issue and it needed to be resolved.
Yeah.
Some people still are booing Tony and all this stuff, but I think some people just don't like Tony, because Tony's also like kind of a nerd who's doing his own thing, and he's confident. And I don't think people like that. I mean, people don't like to see somebody that,
There are always going to be people who don't like you when you're making decisions.
Yes.
Any decision that you make, there's always going to be somebody, and this is even for normal people.
Yeah.
Any decision you make, somebody's going to hate it. There's nothing you can do about that. You just got to live with it. It's part of just being a person in a world with other people who have their own minds and opinions.
That's true. I've never seen this like wrestling tribalism thing as much before. I mean, it's also just the nature of the world, or at least the country.
You didn't live in a world where there were two big wrestling promotions.
Yeah, because WCW, I mean, people like WCW versus WWF, but it never felt like this thing, because it really, a lot of the venom, a lot of times what seems like it comes from like people that like WWE, and it just feels very like punching. I know that Tony doesn't do himself any favors by kind of aggressively trying to compete with WWE when he doesn't really have to, but it is very weird. It's like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. This company's been around for 5 years. WWE's been around for 60 years.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, I mean, you've never.
But they've also had 20 years of
like WWE's never had a challenger brand like AEW in the way that they do now. By that I mean, even WCW, when WCW and WWF were competing, we didn't have internet commenters because that wasn't a thing.
It didn't exist. Yeah,
and also WWF then bought WCW. So
Yeah.
now even if you wanted some retroactive anger, you couldn't have it because anything WCW is now owned by WWE.
Oh yeah.
So we've all lived in an absolute monoculture of wrestling for
Yes.
over 20 years. So like there is no precedent for what this is. And I think that it just makes people go a little nuts.
That's why people
But you're also seeing something you never would have seen
Yes.
before because there would have been no reason
That's true.
to do it, you know.
That's true. That's also why people a lot of times I think are like, well, WWE is the real one because A, it makes the most money, and B, they're like they've had 20 years of being like, this is the way that we do that you're supposed
and
to do wrestling.
Certainly
WCW did stuff a lot more like AEW did.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because people certainly do have like not nice words for Eric Bischoff all the time. Like
Yeah,
I
Bischoff
see him
is...
I see him getting made fun of constantly online. So I think like if WCW did still exist, like hadn't been bought by WWF, I think that you would be more used to this because it would exist more.
What WCW was at the end, it basically became TNA.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what it was. That's basically what happened. It just basically changed into TNA. But WCW prior to like Hogan coming in was a lot more like what AEW does.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's just WWE's had it's kind of revisionist history. You know, they've been able to just like make all this stuff sound like we're the best. This is the best type of wrestling. And it's people have this weird kind of, you know, it feels very capitalist. It's just like whatever makes the most money, and is the most popular, like broadly, is the best version of whatever that is. And it's like not necessarily. That just means it is the most inoffensive version of it, because that's why it's broad appeal. And it's to be something that is appealing to a specific type of audience doesn't necessarily mean that it's not as good. Like it's okay to have different things, different products for different sections of, you know, an audience or for a consumer base.
Yeah.
And WWE, you know, it's fine. It's also fine, I guess, to be, you know, the big one that's for everybody. But anyway, what's going on Instagram?
Sorry, I'm just looking up something for the awards because we
know,
need to get moving.
I was kidding.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, well, now you know.
You didn't have a tone in your voice that was jokey.
Well, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. We should probably move on to the awards because
right.
we're at well over
We're at time. Okay, that's fine. All right, so we can move on to the awards now. So match of the week. Did you want to go first?
No, you should go first.
Great. Match of the week. I had two because there were 2 weeks. I picked it's promo of the week first. Promo of the week, I picked Adam Copeland and Christian Cage in the main event of Dynamite. It was a great segment, a lot of emotion. It was Adam Copeland's first post WWE promo ever, because it's the first time he's ever been out of there, and you know, he's definitely finding his footing, but he was great, very emotional, kept yelling Sting, which was great. And then Christian Cage said the F word, and that was awesome. And it all worked out really well. And like I already actually kind of talked about it. And then the runner-up was Toni Storm finally becoming timeless Toni Storm, because I had to mention it because it was just such a great, she's so dialed into that character. It's so good.
Awesome. My promo of the week is going to be Toni Storm. Well, finding out she's timeless.
Wish I hadn't talked about it.
So, well, that's okay. You talked about it. So there you go. But that's my promo of the week.
All right, great. It was great. And then match of the week, this is where I had two.
Wait. I pick another one because you talked about Toni Storm. So I'll do Stokely Hathaway calling out Eddie Kingston and telling him that we need a champion for Ring of Honor who doesn't smell like Newports and Burger King, because that made me laugh, and it made Renee Paquette almost break on camera, and that was very funny.
I bet it made Eddie Kingston laugh too.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, another runner-up that I would have had was Eddie Kingston after retaining his titles against Shibata at Wrestle Dream. He was like, all I want to do right now is have one of those Snicker joints, one of those Snickers peanut butter pie joints and catering. That's all I want to do. Very funny.
Mood.
Match of the week could have been any number of matches. There were a lot of great matches this past week, but I picked for the previous week Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Adam Page. I thought that was a really great, top-notch stuff. I mean, there were so many other matches from Wrestle Dream I could have picked, but that one really, and the crowd was so into it, and it was a big win for Swerve. And then the following week on Dynamite, it was Rey Fenix and Nick Jackson for the international title, and they revisited a match they'd already had. And it was it was great, man. They really like sold really well, and they're really selling this like Phoenix back injury thing, and it was just a phenomenal match. Check it out if you can. Match of the week.
My match of the week is going to be Tony Storm, Kiera Hogan, because I thought it was funny. I thought it was great. I was glad to see Kiera Hogan getting some time. And Tony Storm even made herself a little meme with her little pose to the camera during it. And that takes real skill to make yourself a meme. So there you go. Match of the week. All right. Outfit of the week.
I picked Julia Hart from Wrestle Dream. She had her similar outfit, but then she had like a veil, like a red veil. That was cool. And then I said Shinsuke Nakamura from Fastlane. I mean, WWE is often, that's where they're going to hit, is the outfits, because it's big production. So he just this big white robe.
And the husband of Mercedes Moné is one of the people who makes those outfits.
Yeah.
So got some real talent back there. My outfit of the week, I'm going to go with everyone from Chokehold.
That seems like the right
because
choice.
Their outfits were all fantastic. One of them had like prosthetic breasts that were just constantly out. And that was pretty funny because it's funny to watch someone wrestle with like giant boobs that are just out and also look perfect because they're plastic. But if I'm going to pick anyone, one person from Chokehold that stood out, it is Viz Queen, who is the lady with the gun leg.
Oh, that
and
is
she also
awesome.
has her nipples, I think, are vaginas and or mouths. I can't tell.
I mean,
but like
one or the other, you know.
Yeah, no, her look was really fantastic.
That is great. That leg looks great.
Yeah,
just imagine it.
I'll put it in the video. All right.
And then Nerd Fantasy Booking. I think AEW should send some of their women's roster to Stardom for tournaments, because that's what they've been doing with some of the men, going to being the best of the Super Juniors and the G1 Climax for New Japan. And so I think that they should send, like, I think I might have talked about this, but they should send Athena, or, you know, even like a Sky Blue, send Tony Storm. I mean, Tony Storm's already been in Stardom, but like there's so many people that could benefit from that. Stardom would benefit from having like Athena, and also people like Sky Blue that would benefit from being in one of those tournaments, you know, because they would get a lot of experience. Julia Hart, she'd probably be really over in Stardom.
I think Rhea Ripley should lead an invasion of AEW.
Whoa. With who? Who do you want to be with her?
With Io, Sky, obviously. And I think she should bring in like Athena, the Ring of Honor people. I think there should just be one night on Collision when it's like something's happening with the guys, and then all of a sudden Rhea Ripley shows up and people are like, what the fuck is Rhea doing here? And it's very much like when Becky Lynch led the invasion of Raw, when she led the SmackDown invasion into Raw. I think it should be just like that, where like people are coming out of the VOMs and like jump in, and like Asuka miss Tony Khan in the face.
Oh, no.
And it's like, oh no. I think it'd be funny because you would immediately institute, like, it would usher in the dawn of a new era of like a bunch of women's matches on Collision, which is a show I think they could, like, you know, make room for women on, because they've got 3 shows.
Yeah, how are they going to do this with only one segment a week? They're going to take it over one segment a week at a time.
No, I think they should take over one show, because AEW has 3 shows. They should take over one of the whole shows, and no one could say boo, because if the WWE fans want to make fun of it, it's like, well, these are your girls, so like,
that's
here
true.
they are. And then the AEW fans, it's like, yeah, well, like, you need some freaking women's matches, so now one of the shows is a women's show. And I think Collision would do better as a women's focused show, or at least a show that focuses on audiences outside of wrestling, and like brings in more comedy, brings in more like surreal elements. Because if you're going up against college football, you're never going to get the college football fans to not watch college football. Like, that's just not going to happen. So if you're going for the guys who watch UFC and boxing and all these other real sports, you know, you've just signed up to lose most of your audience on Saturday nights during football season. But if you appeal to people who are not going to be watching football, perhaps
like
even the wives and girlfriends of the people who are watching football that night and need something to do because they don't want to watch boring old football. No offense, football. I used to watch you a lot until I emotionally disinvested and you became boring. But like, I think that there's a market there that AEW has been neglecting slowly more and more over the last few years. And I think they need to just go back hard into appealing to the non-traditional wrestling fan demographic. And I think they could do that by hiring all the women of WWE and paying them a bunch of money to come in and like beat all the guys up and be like, "This is our show now."
That's what they should do. They should be bringing that talent in. I mean, that's something that people were talking about. NXT had like more women's matches this week than men's, and it's like they're doing better ratings than ever.
Yeah, because women watch wrestling. Women love wrestling, actually,
and representation.
But
is
the
important.
thing that turns women off wrestling, and the thing that makes us bored and makes us stop watching it, is when it's all guys, and when it tries to mimic like real sports. You know, when they try to make it seem like, oh, this is just a boxing, like this is the same amount of pageantry anyone would have for a boxing match. It's like, well, then who cares? Because we have boxing. Like, as a culture, we have real sports. We don't need a facsimile of real sports. We need pageantry. We need theater. We need show tunes, right? Anyway, the cat woke up and agreed. Because it's talking about women's issues, and she's a woman.
Yeah. She's a little lady.
All right. Well, that's all the time we got.
That's all the time we got. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to call our landline.
All right.
Good night, everybody.